The stagecoach lurched violently as it hit another rut in the desert road, sending Eliza Hart's stomach into her throat. She pressed her gloved hand against the leather seat, steadying herself while dust swirled through the gaps in the canvas covering. The journey from Santa Fe to Tucson had already stretched 3 days longer than promised, and the relentless August sun of 1878 showed no mercy to travelers foolish enough to cross the Sonoran Desert. Eliza adjusted her traveling dress, the navy wool far too heavy for this climate but necessary for propriety. At 23, she had learned that appearances mattered more than comfort in her father's world, the same world she was fleeing. Though the irony wasn't lost on her that she was running straight into another cage, an arranged marriage to Thomas Reddick, a railroad magnate she'd met exactly once. "Miss Hart, you ought to take some water," offered Mrs. Clearwater, the minister's wife seated across from her. The older woman's face glistened with perspiration beneath her bonnet. "Thank you, but I'm quite well," Eliza lied, her throat parched as parchment. She'd been rationing her water since yesterday when the driver mentioned they were behind schedule. The stagecoach carried 6 passengers, Eliza, the Clearwaters, a whiskey salesman named Josiah who hadn't stopped talking since Santa Fe, and 2 Mexican traders who kept to themselves. The driver, Old Pete, had assured them this route was safe. The Apache had been mostly pacified. He'd said with the confidence of a man who'd never met one. As the vehicle climbed a steep grade between red rock formations, Eliza found herself thinking about her father's parsonage in St. Louis. The maple trees would be green now, not like these twisted Joshua trees that looked like nature's cruel joke. She'd grown up surrounded by books, studying Latin and arithmetic alongside her brothers until her father decided such education was making her unwomanly. The medical texts she'd secretly read, learning to set bones and mix tinctures from their housekeeper. Sarah, those had been her small rebellion. A sharp whistle pierced the air. Old Pete cursed from his perch. "Everyone down, get..." The first shot splintered the wooden frame beside Eliza's head. Screams erupted as the stagecoach tilted dangerously, horses rearing in panic. Through the chaos, she glimpsed riders emerging from behind the rocks, not Apache, but a mixed band of outlaws, faces masked with bandanas. The strongbox one shouted, "Throw it down!" Josiah fumbled for a derringer, his hands shaking. "Like hell I will." Another shot. The whiskey salesman slumped forward, red spreading across his vest. Misses. Clearwater's screams reached a hysteric pitch as her husband tried to shield her. Eliza's medical training kicked in. She pressed her hands against Josiah's wound, but the blood flowed too fast, too dark, arterial. Nothing she could do with torn petticoat strips and prayer. "Everyone out!" A masked rider yanked open the door. They tumbled into the desert heat, hands raised. Eliza's legs trembled but held. She counted 8 attackers, maybe 9. One wore cavalry spurs, a deserter. Another had the bearing of a vaquero. This wasn't random. They'd known about the strongbox. "The woman," growled a voice with a distinctive southern drawl. "Check her bags." Rough hands tore through Eliza's trunk, scattering her few possessions. Her mother's Bible, the medical supplies she'd hidden beneath her undergarments, the letter from Reddick promising her father a substantial sum upon their marriage, a business transaction dressed as romance. "Nothing but female frippery," spat the searcher. The leader, distinguishable by his black duster despite the heat, studied Eliza with pale eyes above his mask. Something in that gaze made her skin crawl. "Pretty thing. Might fetch a price in Mexico." "Please," Reverend Clearwater stepped forward. "Take what you want, but leave the women." The crack of a rifle butt against his skull cut him short. He crumpled beside his sobbing wife. "Load the strongbox," Black Duster ordered. "Kill the men, the women." He paused, considering. The old one's no use, but this one. Gunfire erupted from the rocks above. Not their gunfire, something different. The outlaws scrambled for cover as bullets kicked up dust around them. Eliza saw her chance and ran, hiking her skirts as she sprinted toward a cluster of boulders. "Get her!" Black Duster roared. She heard hoofbeats behind her, gaining fast. The rocks were still 50 yards away. 30, 20. A rope whistled past her ear. She stumbled, fell hard, skinning her palms on the gravelly earth. The rider was almost upon her when his horse screamed and went down, an arrow protruding from its neck. Eliza scrambled to her feet and kept running. More arrows sang through the air. Apache, but old Pete had said. A hand grabbed her arm, yanking her behind a boulder. She found herself staring into the darkest eyes she'd ever seen, set in a face that was all sharp angles and sun-weathered bronze. The man wore a mix of traditional Apache dress and adapted white man's clothing leather leggings, a cotton shirt torn at the shoulder. Ammunition belts crossed over his chest. "Quiet," he said in accented English, pressing a finger to his lips. She nodded, too breathless to speak. The firefight continued beyond their shelter, shouts in English and Spanish mixing with what must have been Apache war cries. The man beside her notched another arrow, patient as a hunter. When an outlaw rounded their boulder, the arrow found his throat before he could scream. Eliza turned away from the dying man, bile rising. The Apache warrior, for what else could he be, studied her with those penetrating eyes. "You hurt." She looked down at her bloody palms, her torn dress. No, not badly." He nodded once, then peered around the boulder. The gunfire was growing distant. "They run. Good." "The others," Eliza gasped. "The passengers." His expression told her what she already knew. She'd seen too much death in St. Louis during the cholera outbreak to mistake that look. "Come." He stood, offering his hand. "Not safe here." She hesitated. Everything she'd been told about Apache warriors flooded her mind. Savage, ruthless. But this man had saved her life, and the alternative was waiting here for the outlaws to return or dying of thirst in the desert. She took his hand. He led her through a maze of rocks she never would have found alone, moving with the fluid grace of someone who belonged to this harsh landscape. Despite her fear, Eliza found herself noticing details: the scar across his left shoulder, old but deep, the way he checked their back trail every few steps, the careful placement of his feet that made no sound while her boots scraped and stumbled. They climbed steadily upward as the sun began its descent. Eliza's throat burned with thirst, her corset a torture device in the heat. But she didn't complain. When she stumbled for the third time, he stopped. "Here." He produced a water gourd from somewhere, offering it to her. The water was warm, with a leathery taste, but she'd never tasted anything so sweet. She forced herself to sip slowly, remembering Sarah's lessons about drinking too fast in heat. "Thank you," she managed. He took the gourd back, his fingers brushing hers. "Dazin," he said, touching his chest. "Eliza." She attempted a curtsy out of habit, which seemed absurd given the circumstances. The ghost of a smile crossed his features. "Eliza," he repeated, her name sounding foreign and musical in his pronunciation. "Come, safe place near." As they walked, questions tumbled through her mind. Why had he saved her? Where were the other Apache who'd attacked the outlaws? But exhaustion and shock were setting in, making thought difficult. The safe place proved to be a shallow cave concealed behind a fall of rocks, invisible until they were practically inside it. Evidence of use lay scattered about fire-blackened stones, dried plant bundles hanging from the ceiling, a stack of furs in the corner. Dazin gestured for her to sit on the furs while he built a small fire with practiced efficiency. The smoke disappeared up through some crack in the ceiling she couldn't see. As darkness fell outside, the cave became a pocket of warmth and flickering light. He handed her strips of dried meat and a cake of some pressed plant material. "Eat." The meat was tough, gamey, but her stomach welcomed it. The cake tasted of mesquite and something else she couldn't identify. As she ate, Dazin tended to her scraped palms with surprising gentleness, cleaning them with water and applying a paste that stung then numbed. "Why?" she finally asked. "Why help me?" He was quiet for a long moment. wrapping her hands with strips of clean cloth. Men who attack wagon, they attack my people too. Take scalps. Sell in Mexico. Say Apache do it. His English was careful. Chosen. Soldiers come. Always blame Apache. The implication hit her like cold water. The outlaws hadn't just been after the strongbox. They'd been setting up an Apache raid, probably even planned to scalp the victims to sell for bounty. She'd heard of such horrors, but never believed civilized men capable of them. "The leader," she said slowly. "The one in the black coat. His spurs were military issue." Dazin's eyes sharpened. "You see this?" She nodded. "My father, he ministers to soldiers sometimes. I've seen those spurs before." "Ahida." He said something longer in Apache, his tone grim. "You know this man?" "No, but—" A thought struck her, cold and unwelcome. There were supposed to be army patrols on this route. That's why we took it. But we never saw any. Dazin fed another stick to the fire. "No patrols here. Not for many days." The implications made her stomach turn. Had they been deliberately led into an ambush? But why? The strongbox couldn't have contained that much unless— "I need to get to Tucson," she said. "There are people waiting for me. They'll send search parties." Tucson, 5 days' walk. Maybe 6. He studied her soft hands, her impractical dress. "You not make it alone. Then I'll pay you to guide me." "I have—" She reached for her purse, remembering too late it was back at the stagecoach with everything else she owned. "No need pay." He stood, adding more wood to the fire. "I take you, but not now. Rest first. Tomorrow. Maybe next day. When safe." Exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. The furs were surprisingly soft. Certainly more comfortable than the stagecoach bench. But propriety reared its head. "I couldn't— That is, it wouldn't be proper for us to—" That ghost smile returned. "I sleep outside. You safe here?" True to his word, he gathered a blanket and moved to the cave entrance, positioning himself between her and any danger that might come in the night. Eliza lay down on the furs, her mind whirling with the day's horrors and mysteries. Through half-closed eyes, she watched Dazin's silhouette against the stars, keeping watch. She should have been terrified. Everything she'd been taught said she should fear this man above all others. But as sleep began to claim her, all she felt was an inexplicable sense of safety. The last thing she saw before darkness took her was Dazin turning to check on her, his dark eyes reflecting the firelight like some ancient guardian spirit. When she woke hours later to the sound of wind howling outside, he was there instantly, adding more fuel to the fire, checking the cave entrance. Their eyes met across the flames, and he said something soft in Apache she didn't understand, but his tone was reassuring, protective. "Sleep," he said in English. "Long walk tomorrow." As she drifted back to sleep, Eliza Hart, properly raised minister's daughter, reluctant bride-to-be, realized her world had shifted irrevocably. The desert had claimed her old life as surely as it had claimed the stagecoach. What remained to be seen was what would rise from its ashes. The morning sun painted the cave walls amber when Eliza woke, her body stiff from sleeping on unfamiliar ground. Dazin was already awake, crushing something with a stone mortar near the fire. The sharp, medicinal smell reminded her of Sarah's kitchen back home. "Your hands," he said without looking up, his English careful and measured. She examined her palms, surprised to find the scrapes already beginning to heal beneath his poultice. "What did you use?" "Chawajo." At her blank look, he added, "Desert plant. Good for—" He made a gesture indicating healing. She watched him work, noting the practiced efficiency of his movements. "Where did you learn English?" "Mission school. When young." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Before soldiers come to my village." The weight of unspoken history hung between them. Eliza knew enough about the forced relocations, the boarding schools that stripped children from their families, to understand the pain behind his simple words. "I'm sorry," she said. Meaning it. He looked up then, studying her with those penetrating dark eyes. You not do it? No, but... She stopped, recognizing the futility of apologizing for her entire race. Instead, she asked, Will you teach me the plant chawajo? How to recognize it? Something shifted in his expression. He held up the remaining stems, showing her the small, silvery leaves. Look for this shape. Grows near rocks, where water runs in rain time. For the next hour, he taught her about desert medicine, Apache tea for stomach troubles, mesquite sap for wounds, which cacti held water and which would poison. Eliza found herself taking mental notes with the same intensity she'd once applied to her father's forbidden medical texts. You learn quick, Dawson observed, packing away his supplies. My father would say too quick for a woman. The bitterness in her voice surprised her. Your father is fool. The blunt assessment startled a laugh from her, the first since the attack. I shouldn't agree, but yes, he is. Dawson stood, checking the cave entrance. We go soon, but first... He produced a pair of worn moccasins and a length of fabric. Your shoes no good for walking. Your dress... He gestured at the torn, blood-stained navy wool. Eliza looked down at herself, recognizing the impracticality of her attire. But propriety warred with survival. I couldn't possibly. You die in desert dressed like that, choose. Put that way, the choice was simple. She took the offered items, and Dawson turned his back while she struggled out of her corset and heavy skirts. The simple shift she fashioned from the fabric felt scandalous in its freedom, but she could breathe properly for the first time in days. The moccasins were soft, broken in by someone else's feet, but surprisingly comfortable. Better, Dawson said when she indicated she was ready. He handed her a gourd of water and a pouch of dried food. We walk in shadows. Rest when sun is high. Understand? She nodded, following him from the cave into a world transformed by morning light. The desert that had seemed so hostile yesterday now held an austere beauty. Red rocks painted gold, purple shadows in the valleys, the distant mountains like sleeping giants. They walked in silence for the first hour, Dawson setting a pace that challenged but didn't exhaust her. He moved like water through the landscape, finding paths where she saw only obstacles. Gradually, she began to see the desert through his eyes, not as emptiness, but as a complex tapestry of life adapted to hardship. There, he pointed to marks in the sand. Javelina, desert pig, good eating if can catch. Do you hunt them? Sometimes, but not now. We leave small sign as possible. The reminder of danger sobered her. Those men, the ones who attacked the stage, will they follow? Maybe, but they think you dead. Probably easier that way. As the sun climbed higher, the heat became oppressive. Dawson led her to a cluster of palo verde trees that offered thin shade. They sat, sharing water and dried meat in companionable silence. Tell me, he said suddenly, why you on stage, young woman, alone? Eliza hesitated, then decided on honesty. I'm to be married, in Tucson, to a man named Thomas Reddick. You love this man. The directness of the question caught her off guard. I've met him once. My father arranged it. Mr. Reddick owns railroad interests. The marriage will be advantageous. Dawson made a sound that might have been disgust. Sold, like horse. It's not, but wasn't it? Her father would receive a generous donation to his church, clearing his debts. Reddick would get a young, educated wife to grace his home. And she, yes, like a horse. Among my people, woman chooses, man must prove worthy. How progressive. She couldn't keep the irony from her voice. And yet here I am, dependent on your charity. Not charity, trade. At her questioning look, he explained, You saw soldiers' spurs. Remember details. This valuable to me, to my people. They resumed walking as the afternoon shadows lengthened. Dazen taught her to read the landscape which birds meant water was near, how to spot the difference between animal tracks and human sign, where rattlesnakes like to hide during the day's heat. "You good student," he said as she correctly identified a roadrunner's distinctive print. "I had a good teacher once. Sarah, she worked for my family, taught me about herbs and healing until my father found out." "What happened to her?" "Dismissed without reference. I never saw her again." The old guilt twisted in her stomach. "I tried to find her, but—" "Not your fault. I could have been more careful, could have hidden the books better." Dazen stopped walking, turning to face her. "Blame helps nothing. What matters is what you do now." The simple wisdom of it struck her. She'd spent 3 years drowning in guilt over Sarah's dismissal. But what had that accomplished? Nothing but paralysis that led her to accept her father's arrangement with Reddick. They made camp that night in a protected hollow. No cave this time, but walls of rock that would hide their small fire. Dazen showed her how to gather the driest wood that would produce the least smoke, how to build the fire small but hot. As darkness fell and the desert cold crept in, they sat on opposite sides of the fire. Eliza found herself studying his face in the flickering light, the strong jaw, the scar that pulled at the corner of his left eye, the way his hands moved with such careful precision. "Tell me about your people," she said, "your family." His expression shuddered. "Had family, no more." "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "No, is fair question." He fed a stick to the fire, watching it catch. "My village near river. Good land. We farm, hunt, live in peace. Then soldiers come. Say we must move to San Carlos. Bad land there. No water. No game." She waited, sensing more. "My father say no. We stay, fight." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "Soldiers come at dawn. Many guns. My mother, my sister." He made a cutting gesture. "How old were you?" 14 winters, old enough to fight, too young to win." The fire crackled between them, filling the silence. Eliza thought of her own losses, her mother to childbirth when she was 12, her dreams of studying medicine, her friendship with Sarah. They seemed small compared to his devastation. "Is that why you were alone when you found me?" "Not alone, never alone." He gestured to the desert around them. "This is home. These rocks know me. Wind carries stories of my people. Stars remember." The poetry in his words surprised her. This was not the savage her world had taught her to expect, but a man of depth and feeling, scarred by loss but not broken by it. A coyote howled in the distance, answered by another. Dazen listened intently, then relaxed. "Just hunting. No danger." "How can you tell?" "Different songs for different things. Hunt song, warning song, morning song." He tilted his head. "You have music in your world." "Church hymns mostly, though I learned piano Bach, Mozart." She hummed a few bars of a Bach invention. "Pretty, like water over stones." He was quiet a moment, then began to sing softly in Apache. The melody was unlike anything in her musical education, rising and falling like wind through canyons, ancient and wild. "What does it mean?" "Song for travelers. Ask spirits of land to guide. Protect." He met her eyes across the fire. "I sing for you." Something shifted in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the flames. "Thank you." They sat in comfortable silence as the fire died to embers. When she shivered, Dazen wordlessly handed her his blanket. "You'll be cold," she protested. "I am used to it. You not." She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, catching his scent leather and sage and something uniquely him. "In my world, this would be—" She searched for words. "People would say terrible things. An unmarried woman alone with a man, especially—" "Apache man." "Yes." "Your world has strange rules. Here, desert makes rules. We follow or die." "It's simpler," she agreed. More honest. Truth usually is. As she settled down to sleep, using her folded dress as a pillow, Eliza found herself thinking about truth. The truth of her father selling her for church repairs. The truth of those outlaws with military spurs. The truth of this man who'd saved her life, asking nothing in return but information that might help his people. Dawson, she called softly. What will you do with what I told you about the spurs? Remember, watch. Learn who leads these men. Why Army lets them hunt. His voice hardened. Then maybe my people know who real enemy is. She thought about Thomas Reddick waiting in Tucson, about the life planned out for her in his fine house, about the letter in her destroyed luggage that promised her father payment upon delivery of his daughter. I'm not going to Tucson, she said suddenly, surprising herself. Dazin was quiet so long she thought he'd fallen asleep. Then, where you go? I don't know. California, maybe. Somewhere I can start over. Somewhere nobody knows me. Dangerous for woman alone. Yes, she pulled the blanket tighter. But I'm learning to survive. Tomorrow, he said, and she heard approval in his voice. I teach you to find water. As sleep took her, Eliza felt the last chains of her old life breaking. Out here in the vast desert, under stars that remembered ancient songs, she was becoming someone new, someone who chose her own path, whatever the danger. The last thing she heard was Dazin humming that traveler's song, weaving protection through the darkness. For the first time in years, she slept without dreams of cages. The third day brought them to the edge of a vast alkali flat, shimmering like water under the brutal sun. Dazin studied the horizon, his expression grim. Bad crossing, he said. No shade, no water until other side. Eliza squinted at the desolate expanse. How far? Half-day walk, maybe more. He turned to examine her, noting the sunburned skin despite her makeshift head covering, the determination in her green eyes. We wait for night. Will that make it safer? Cooler, but harder to see landmarks. Easy to walk circles, get lost. She considered, then squared her shoulders. I trust your judgment. He nodded slowly. Tonight, then. Rest now. They found shelter in a grove of mesquite trees, their beans hanging heavy and ripe. Dazin showed her how to grind them into flour between stones, mixing it with precious water to form a paste that tasted sweet and nutty. Good food, he explained. Gives strength for walking. As they prepared for the crossing, Eliza noticed him favoring his left shoulder, the one with the old scar. Your hurt is nothing. Old wound. Sometimes reminds me it's there. Let me see. When he hesitated, she added, I know some healing, please. Reluctantly, he pulled aside his shirt. The scar was worse than she'd thought, a twisted mass of tissue that spoke of a badly healed bullet wound. But it was the fresh bruising that concerned her. He must have wrenched it during the fight at the stagecoach. You should have said something. She gently probed the area, feeling the inflammation. I need willow bark for the pain, comfrey for the swelling. No willow here, but... He stood, returning minutes later with a different plant. This works same. Together they prepared a poultice, Eliza marveling at how their different knowledge complemented each other. As she worked, she became aware of his proximity, the warmth radiating from his skin, the way his breathing changed when her fingers found a tender spot. There, she said, securing the bandage with strips from her petticoat. That should help. Thank you. He caught her hand as she pulled away, examining the blisters forming despite the moccasins. Now you. His touch was gentle as he applied salve to her feet, wrapping them with soft leather. Eliza found herself studying the top of his head, the way his black hair caught blue highlights in the sun. When he looked up, their eyes met and held. We should rest, she said, her voice unsteady. Yes, but neither moved for a long moment. As darkness fell, they prepared for the crossing. Dazin filled every available container with water, showed her how to tie her hair up to reduce sweating, how to breathe through her nose to conserve moisture. "Stay close," he instructed. "If separated, follow stars." He pointed out the constellation. "That one leads north, always north." The alkali flat under moonlight looked like another world, ghostly white, cracked like broken pottery. Their footsteps crunched on the salt crust, the sound unnaturally loud in the silence. Hour after hour they walked, Eliza focusing on Dazin's back, matching his steady pace. Halfway across, the wind picked up, swirling alkali dust that burned their eyes and throats. Dazin pulled her close, wrapping his blanket around them both as they struggled forward. She pressed her face against his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady. "Not far now," he said against her hair. "Be strong." She wanted to tell him she was trying, but her throat was too dry for words. Instead, she nodded and kept walking. Dawn was breaking when they finally reached the other side, stumbling into an arroyo where a tiny spring bubbled up between rocks. They fell to their knees, drinking carefully, slowly, as Dazin had taught her. "You did well," he said, and the approval in his voice meant more than it should have. They rested through the heat of the day, too exhausted for lessons or conversation. But when Eliza woke from fitful sleep, she found Dazin had woven her a hat from yucca fibers, better protection than her torn bonnet. "You're kind," she said, trying it on. He shrugged. "Is practical. Sunsick woman no good for traveling." But she caught him almost smiling and knew better. That evening, as they prepared to move on, voices carried on the wind. Dazin went rigid, pulling her behind a boulder. 3 riders appeared on the horizon, moving slowly, studying the ground. "Trackers," he breathed, looking for something or someone. Eliza's heart hammered as the riders drew closer. One was Apache. She could tell by his dress. The other 2 were white men, rough-looking with rifles across their saddles. They stopped at the spring, watering their horses. "Trail goes cold at the salt," one said in English. "If they cross that, they're ghosts or dead." "Apaches no ways," the other replied. "That's why we brought this one." The Apache tracker said something in Spanish, pointing north. After more discussion, they mounted and rode off, fortunately in the wrong direction. Dazin waited long minutes before moving. "This is bad. They look for us specifically." "But how would they know?" Eliza stopped, remembering. "The letter in my luggage, from Reddick. If they found it—" "What letter say?" She flushed. "That he was expecting me, that certain arrangements had been made. It mentioned my name, description." Dazin's expression darkened. "This Reddick, he has power." "Railroad money, political connections, yes. Then he looks for his property." The word stung, but she couldn't deny its truth. "I won't go back. I won't be sold." "No, you won't." The fierce certainty in his voice surprised them both. He cleared his throat. "We go different way now. Longer, but safer." They traveled through the night again, this time following a narrow canyon that wound between towering cliffs. Dazin told her stories as they walked, how coyotes stole fire, why ravens were black, the woman who married the moon. His voice painted pictures in the darkness, making the miles pass easier. "Do you believe them?" Eliza asked. "The stories." "Believe," he considered. "Stories hold truth. Even if facts are different, you have stories." She thought of the Bible tales that had filled her childhood, the Greek myths she'd discovered in her father's library. "Yes, though I'm not sure I believe them anymore." Maybe problem is not stories. Maybe it's people who tell them what they want you to think. His insight startled her. "You're quite the philosopher." "Big word. Don't know it. It means someone who thinks deeply about life, truth, meaning." "Ah, in Apache, we say, one who watches stars and wonders. Same thing, maybe." They came upon the camp suddenly, a Mescalero Apache family group sheltered in a hidden valley. Dazin called out in Apache, hands visible. After tense moments, they were welcomed, though Eliza felt the weight of curious and not entirely friendly stares. The leader, an older woman with steel-gray hair, spoke rapidly with Dazin. Her gaze kept returning to Eliza, assessing. "She says you can rest here," Dazin translated, "but questions why I travel with white woman." "What did you tell her?" "Truth, that you flee forced marriage, that men hunt you." He paused. "That you have courage." The woman approached Eliza directly, circling her like a horse trader. She said something that made the other women laugh. "What?" Eliza asked. Dazin's ears reddened slightly. "She says you too skinny. Wonders how you walk the salt. Says I should feed you better." "Despite everything," Eliza laughed, "tell her I'm tougher than I look." The translation sparked more discussion, seemingly improving the woman's opinion. She gestured for Eliza to sit with the other women while the men talked separately. Using gestures and the few Spanish words they shared, the Apache women showed Eliza their work basket weaving, hide preparation, the endless tasks of survival. A young mother let her hold a baby, and Eliza felt an unexpected pang at the warm weight in her arms. "You want children?" the mother asked in broken English. "Someday, with the right person." Eliza glanced across the camp to where Dazin sat with the men, his face serious in the firelight. The woman followed her gaze and smiled knowingly. "He good man, lonely too long." As night deepened, the group shared a meal of rabbit stew and acorn cakes. Eliza noticed how Dazin ensured she received a full portion, how he positioned himself between her and the more suspicious members of the group. "Later," the old woman pulled Dazin aside for another intense conversation. Eliza caught her own name several times. "And Reddix." The woman's expression grew increasingly grave. "What is it?" Eliza asked when he returned to her. "She knows of Reddick. Says he makes deals with Army. Wants Apache land for railroad." He met her eyes. "Says any woman who runs from such a man is welcome here." "Here, but I'm not. Apache, no. But she says heart matters more than blood." He was quiet a moment. "She also says Reddick offers reward, much gold for your return." Eliza's stomach clenched. "How much?" "Enough to tempt many, Apache, Mexican, American, all will look." "Then I'm putting you in danger. I should—" "Should what, walk desert alone, let them catch you?" His voice roughened. "No." "But your people, you are under my protection now. This means something to Apache, cannot be broken." The weight of that commitment settled over her. "Why, you don't owe me anything." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "First time I see you, in cave, you look at me without fear, without hate, just seeing, real seeing." He touched his chest. "Here, I think maybe world can be different. Maybe Apache and white can just be people together." Tears burned her eyes. "Dazin!" "Also," he added with a slight smile, "you interesting woman. Argue with desert instead of dying. Worth keeping alive." She laughed, despite the tears. "Such flattery." The old woman appeared with blankets, gesturing for them to sleep. She pointed to a shelter away from the main group close enough for protection but offering privacy. "She thinks we are together," Dazin explained, clearly uncomfortable. "Let her think it," Eliza said quietly. "It's safer than the truth that I'm a runaway bride worth her weight in gold." They lay down on opposite sides of the shelter, the space between them feeling both too wide and too narrow. Eliza listened to his breathing, to the night sounds of the camp, to her own treacherous heart beating too fast. "Dazin," she whispered. What happens when we can't run anymore?" He turned toward her, his face a shadow in the darkness. "Then we stand, fight, together." "Together," she repeated, tasting the word like a promise. As sleep claimed her, Eliza thought about the strange turns that had brought her here from her father's parlor to an Apache camp, from corsets and propriety to moccasins and freedom. The woman she'd been a week ago would be horrified. But that woman had been sleepwalking through life, accepting cages as protection. This woman sunburned, blistered. Hunted was finally awake. And despite everything, she wouldn't trade it for all the safety in the world. The night wind howled through the canyon, driving them to seek shelter in a shallow cave. They'd been running since midnight, when Apache scouts brought word that riders were approaching the Mescalero camp too many to fight, moving with purpose. "Here," Dazin said, guiding her into the narrow opening. "Storm comes. Good for us covers tracks." As if summoned by his words, the first fat raindrops began to fall, quickly becoming a deluge. Lightning illuminated the landscape in stark flashes, thunder echoing off the canyon walls. They pressed deeper into the cave, their clothes soaked through. Eliza's teeth chattered uncontrollably. The desert that burned during the day turned cruel at night, and the rain made it worse. Dazin gathered what dry wood he could find deeper in the cave, coaxing a small fire to life with patient skill. "Come," he said, spreading his blanket near the flames. "Must get warm." She hesitated, propriety warring with survival. Another violent shiver decided her. She sat beside him, accepting the blanket he wrapped around them both. His body heat was like a furnace against her side. "Better?" he asked.
"Yes."
Her voice came out smaller than intended. She was acutely aware of every point of contact, shoulder, hip, thigh. In the firelight, his profile was all sharp angles and shadows. "Thank you." They sat in silence, listening to the storm rage outside. The fire painted dancing shadows on the cave walls, and Eliza found herself thinking of the ancient peoples who might have sheltered here before them. "The Mescalero woman," she said eventually. "She called you something. Bida. What does it mean?" "Means he who walks between." Dazin fed another stick to the fire. "Because I know both worlds, Apache and White, belong to neither." "That must be lonely." "Sometimes." He glanced at her. "You understand now. You also walk between." She considered this. "I suppose I do. Can't go back to my father's world, but I'm not part of yours either. Maybe we make new world, just for us." The simple statement hung in the air between them. Eliza turned to study his face, finding him already watching her. Something shifted in the space between them, the air growing thick with unspoken possibility. "Dazin," she breathed. He lifted his hand to her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "I should not." "Please," she whispered, not sure what she was asking for, but knowing she needed it like air. He leaned closer, their foreheads touching. She could feel his breath against her lips, warm and sweet. Time seemed to stop, the storm outside fading to nothing. Then, with careful deliberation, he closed the final distance. The kiss was soft, almost reverent. Eliza had been kissed twice before chaste pecks from approved suitors that left her feeling nothing. This was different. This was fire and tenderness, question and answer all at once. When they parted, she was trembling for reasons that had nothing to do with cold. "Eliza." He said her name like a prayer. She touched his face, tracing the scar near his eye. "Is this why you saved me, this feeling?" "No, saved you because was right." His hand covered hers. "This feeling, this came after, grew with each day, each word between us." "I feel it too," she admitted. It's never been like this." He smiled then, a real smile that transformed his serious face. "Good. Would be sad if only me." She laughed, the sound mixing with distant thunder. "What do we do now?" "Now." He pulled her closer, arranging the blanket more securely around them. "Now we rest. Storm will pass. Tomorrow brings what it brings." She laid her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "Tell me something. About before, when you were happy." He was quiet for a moment, then began to speak. "When I was boy, maybe 10 winters. My grandmother take me to mountain, sacred place. She show me where eagles nest, teach me their songs. We stay 3 days, just watching, learning. What did you learn? Patience. How to see without looking. How eagle knows when storm comes. How it rides wind instead of fighting. His voice grew soft with memory. She tell me I have eagle medicine. Would need it someday. She was right. Yes, did not know then how much I would need. His arm tightened around her. What about you, happy memory? Eliza thought back. My mother, before she died, she had a garden, not practical vegetables like father wanted, but flowers, roses, lavender, things that smelled beautiful. She'd take me there in early morning, when dew was still on petals, said it was our secret world. She sounds wise. She was... Father changed after she died, became harder, more rigid, like her softness was what kept him human. She sighed. I tried to tend her garden, but he had it plowed under, said it was frivolous. Your father fears beauty, fears anything he cannot control. The insight was sharp, accurate. Yes, I think that's exactly right. They fell quiet again, watching the fire burn lower. Outside, the storm was beginning to pass, thunder growing distant. In the morning, they would have to run again, stay ahead of their pursuers. But for now, in this cave that existed outside of time, they had found a moment of peace. Sleep, Dazin said softly. I keep watch. You need rest too. We'll rest when you're safe. Until then, I watch. She wanted to argue, but recognized the futility. Instead, she pressed closer, drawing comfort from his solid presence. As drowsiness claimed her, she heard him begin to sing that same traveler's protection song from their first night. But now she heard her name woven into the Apache words, making it personal, making it theirs. Dawn came too soon, bringing with it harsh reality. The storm had indeed covered their tracks, but it had also transformed the canyon into a rushing torrent. They would have to climb out, exposed on the cliff face. Can you do it? Dazin asked, studying the route. Eliza looked at the near vertical climb, fighting down fear. Do I have a choice? Always have choice, but other choices may be worse. She managed a weak smile. Then I choose to climb. He went first, testing each handhold, calling back instructions. Eliza followed, her world narrowing to the next grip, the next foothold. Halfway up, her strength began to fail. Her fingers, soft despite days of hardship, screamed protest. Cannot stop here, Dazin called down. Little more. You can do. She wanted to tell him she couldn't, that her hands were slipping, that she was going to fall. Instead, she gritted her teeth and kept climbing. One hold, another. Then Dazin's hands were pulling her over the edge, onto blessed flat ground. She collapsed, gasping. As he checked her hands, they were torn and bleeding. Brave woman, he murmured, quickly binding her palms with strips of cloth. Brave like eagle. Eagles fly, she panted. They don't climb cliffs. Today you do both. From their high vantage point, they could see for miles. The desert stretched endlessly, painted in shades of gold and red by the morning sun. And there, distant but unmistakable, a dust cloud marking riders. They follow still, Dazin observed. This Reddick does not give up. He's not used to losing. Eliza flexed her bandaged hands. Especially not something he considers his property. You are no one's property. The fierceness in his voice warmed her. Come, I know place we can rest, heal. They walked through the morning, keeping to high ground where horses couldn't follow. By noon, they reached what Dazin had promised, a hidden spring surrounded by cottonwoods, invisible from below. How do you know all these places? Eliza asked, sinking gratefully beside the water. Apache memory long. Every spring, every cave, every hidden path, all remembered, passed down. He began gathering plants she now recognized: willow for pain, chamomile for calming. This spring, my people call it where eagles drink, sacred place. As he prepared medicine for her hands, Eliza watched him work, the morning light caught in his hair, highlighting red undertones she'd never noticed. His movements were sure, graceful, completely at home in this harsh land. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. "What?" he asked, catching her stare. "I'm memorizing you," she said honestly. "In case—" "No." He cupped her face with one hand. "No, in case. We survive this. Together." You can't promise that." "Can promise I try. With everything in me." He was quiet a moment. "You change things. Eliza Hart. Make me think maybe future different than past." "How do you mean?" He sat back, choosing words carefully. "Apache way is ending. Everyone knows. Even if not say soldiers too many, guns too strong. Old ones say we must adapt or disappear like morning mist." He met her eyes. "You make me think maybe adaptation not all bad. Maybe some bridges worth building, and some worth burning." He smiled at that. "Yes, wisdom is knowing which." As the afternoon wore on, they rested in the shade, healing and planning. Dawson sketched maps in the dirt, showing her routes to California, to Mexico, to anywhere but back. "What about you?" she asked. "After you get me somewhere safe." "After—" He seemed surprised by the question. "Have not thought past keeping you alive." "Well, think now. What do you want?" He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Want place where can be myself. Not tame Apache for whites. Not apple red outside. White inside for my people. Just Dawson." He glanced at her. "Maybe place where Apache man and white woman can just be together. No one throwing stones." "Does such a place exist?" "If not, we make it exist." The simple determination in his voice made her believe it might be possible. She reached for his hand, intertwining their fingers. "Then that's what we'll do." As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in the shades of flame, Dawson stood. "Come, want to show you something." He led her to a flat rock overlooking the valley. Ancient symbols were carved into its surface: spirals, stick figures, animals she couldn't identify. "Old ones leave messages," he explained. "This one tells of journey. See?" He traced a winding line. "Path through desert. Here, danger." He indicated crossed marks. "But here," his finger found a circle with radiating lines. "New beginning, like sun rising." "It's beautiful." She studied the ancient art. "How old?" "Older than memory, but truth stays same." He turned to her, something intense in his gaze. "Eliza, I must say—" A gunshot cracked across the valley, echoing off the cliffs. They dropped flat against the rock, Dawson pushing her behind him. Below, riders were spreading out, at least a dozen of them. "How?" she gasped. "Apache tracker with them. Better than I thought." His jaw was tight. "They pin us here, wait us out." "What do we do?" He studied the terrain with warrior's eyes. "You trust me?" "With my life." "Good, because plan is dangerous." He pointed to where shadows were gathering. "When sun sets, we go down, not away toward them. They not expect, in darkness, confusion, we slip past." "That's insane." "Yes, why it might work." He touched her cheek. "Whatever happens, want you to know these days with you worth everything. Worth lifetime." "Don't talk like that. We're both getting out of here." He kissed her then, fierce and desperate, pouring everything unsaid into the contact. When they broke apart, his eyes held promises too large for words. "When darkness comes," he said, "all business now. Stay close. Trust me." Eliza nodded, pushing down terror. Below, their pursuers were making camp, confident they had their quarry trapped. She pressed against Dawson, drawing strength from his solid presence. That symbol, she said quietly, indicating the ancient sunrise. What did you call it? New beginning, he murmured. Dawn after long night. Then that's what we'll have, she said fiercely. A new dawn, together. He squeezed her hand as the sun touched the horizon, painting the world in blood and gold. Soon it would be time to move, to risk everything on his desperate plan. But for now, they watched the light fade together, two souls caught between worlds, choosing to forge a new one from the fragments of the old. Now you are mine at dawn, he whispered, the words carrying on the evening wind like a promise, like a prayer. And as darkness gathered around them, Eliza understood what he meant. Not possession, but choice. Not taking, but giving. Every dawn from now on, they would choose each other again. If they survived the night, the mountain settlement appeared like a mirage after their harrowing escape through the darkness. Dawson's desperate plan had worked. They'd slipped past Reddick's men in the confusion of night, though not without cost. A bullet had grazed Dawson's ribs, and exhaustion weighed on them both like stones. My people, Dawson said quietly as they approached the scattered wickiups and adobe structures. Some Apache, some Mexican, some both. Here, boundaries blur. Children ran out to meet them, chattering in a mix of languages. Their excitement dimmed when they saw Dawson's bloodied shirt and Eliza's pale features. An older woman emerged from the largest dwelling, her face weathered but kind. Dawson, she said in accented English, clearly for Eliza's benefit. Long time. Who is this? Eliza Hart, he replied. She needs sanctuary. We both do. The woman, Maria Delgado. Eliza learned studied her with sharp eyes. The woman the railroad man seeks. You know about that? Eliza asked. Everyone knows. Much gold offered. Maria's gaze softened. But here, we remember who helps and who hurts. Come, you need food, medicine, rest. Over the next days, Eliza found herself absorbed into the rhythm of the settlement. The women taught her to grind corn on metates, to weave baskets from sotol, to recognize which cacti produced edible fruit. Their initial wariness faded as they saw her willingness to work and learn. You not like other white women, said Anna, a young Apache mother, as they gathered pinon nuts together. You listen, really listen. I had a good teacher, Eliza replied, glancing toward where Dawson worked with the men, repairing an irrigation channel. Anna smiled knowingly. He watches you when you're not looking, like man seeing water after long thirst. Eliza felt heat rise in her cheeks. Since their arrival, she and Dawson had been given separate quarters propriety maintained even here, but the distance chafed at her. She'd grown used to his presence, his warmth in the cold desert nights. Your people don't mind, she asked, that he brought a white woman here. Anna's expression grew serious. Some mind, say it brings trouble, but Maria, she has wisdom. Says heart chooses what it chooses, says maybe you bridge between worlds. That evening, Eliza found Dawson sitting alone on a ridge overlooking the valley. She settled beside him, their shoulders touching. How are your ribs? Healing. He glanced at her hands, now calloused from work. You adapt quick. Already women say you have gift for plants. I like it here, she admitted. It feels real, honest. But, she sighed, but I can't hide forever, and my presence puts everyone at risk. This I know. He picked up a small stone, turning it in his fingers. Today, riders came to Valley Below, spoke with Miguel, our trader. Reddick raises reward, says you were kidnapped, must be rescued. The liar! Anger flashed through her. He knows perfectly well. Yes, but his story easier for people to believe. White woman choosing Apache man. He shook his head. This breaks their world. They sat in silence as the sun began its descent. Finally, Eliza spoke. I've been thinking about the letter in my luggage. If Reddick is claiming I was kidnapped, then he must have destroyed evidence of our arrangement. But there might be other proof. In Tucson, documents, witnesses. Dangerous to go there. More dangerous to keep running. If I could prove the truth that I fled willingly, that Reddick orchestrated the attack, maybe we could be free. Dazin turned to study her face. You would risk this? For us, yes. He pulled her close then, heedless of who might see. Brave woman, eagle woman. Your eagle woman, she asked softly. If you choose, every dawn, if you choose. She kissed him in answer, pouring all her certainty into the contact. When they parted, she saw several settlement members watching from below. Some faces showed disapproval, others curiosity. Maria Delgado simply nodded, as if something had been confirmed. That night, the settlement held council. Eliza sat with the women, understanding perhaps half of the rapid mix of Spanish and Apache, but the gestures were clear. Some argued for asking them to leave, others for fighting if Reddick's men came. Finally, Maria stood. I speak in English, so all understand. Her voice carried authority. This woman comes to us in need. Apache way, Mexican way, Christian way, all say we help those who suffer. Yes, danger follows her, but danger already here, always here. Soldiers, raiders, railroad men who want our water. At least this danger we face with truth on our side. An old Apache man spoke up. The white woman, she brings eyes on us. Government eyes. Government eyes already on us. Maria countered. They count us, measure our land, wait for excuse to move us. Maybe better to have witness, someone who speaks their language, knows their ways. The debate continued, but Eliza sensed the tide turning. When Dazin stood to speak, the crowd quieted. Eliza Hart saved my life, he said simply. When soldiers came to my family, no white person spoke for us. When they put bounty on Apache scalps, no white person said this was wrong. Now, one white woman stands with us, sees us as people, not savages. This matters. Pretty words, spat a younger man. But she's still white, still brings trouble. Yes, Dawson agreed. She is white, and I choose her still. Choose her at dawn, at sunset, in storm and calm. Any who insult her, insult me. The challenge hung in the air. Eliza held her breath, recognizing this as a crucial moment. Then Maria laughed, breaking the tension. Young people, she said, shaking her head. Always making simple things difficult. Girl stays. We prepare for whatever comes. Meeting over. As the crowd dispersed, several women approached Eliza. Some offered shy smiles, others practical advice. Anna pressed a small charm into her hand beads and feathers woven together. For protection, she explained, and for fertility. When time comes. Eliza blushed furiously but accepted the gift with gratitude. Days passed in tense preparation. The men posted lookouts, cached weapons, planned escape routes. The women dried meat, filled water jars, packed essentials. Eliza learned to shoot under Dawson's patient instruction, though her aim remained questionable. Here, he adjusted her stance. Breathe out slow, squeeze, not pull. The tin can jumped off its perch, and Eliza whooped in triumph. Dawson smiled, pride evident in his eyes. Maybe you become warrior woman yet. I'd rather remain a healer, she said, but she practiced until her shoulder ached. It was during one of these sessions that a rider appeared on the valley floor, moving slowly with a white flag tied to his rifle. The settlement went on immediate alert, weapons appearing from hidden places. Wait, Eliza said, squinting against the sun. I know that rider. As the figure drew closer, her suspicion was confirmed. Martha Hart, her cousin, dressed in traveling clothes and looking thoroughly out of place in the desert landscape. What is she doing here? Dawson asked. I have no idea. Eliza's mind raced. But Martha's no fool. She wouldn't come alone unless... They met Martha at the settlement's edge, weapons trained on her from a dozen hidden positions. She dismounted carefully, hands visible.
"Eliza,"
she said, relief evident in her voice.
"Thank God you're alive."
Martha, how did you find me? Followed the trail of rumors. Amazing how gossip travels, even in the desert. Her gaze took in Eliza's transformed appearance, the simple dress, the sun-darkened skin, the Apache charm visible at her throat. You look different.
"I am different."
Eliza studied her cousin warily.
"Why are you here?"
Martha glanced around nervously. Can we speak privately? What I have to say, it's important. After a quick consultation with Dazin and Maria, they brought Martha to a small adobe house. She accepted water gratefully, then pulled a leather portfolio from her saddlebags.
"After you disappeared, there was chaos," she began. "Reddick arrived in Tucson furious, claiming Apache had kidnapped you, but I knew better. You told me about the arrangement, how trapped you felt.
And
I did some investigating. Reddick's not just building railroads. Eliza, he's been orchestrating attacks on settlers, blaming Apache, then buying the abandoned land cheap."
She opened the portfolio, revealing documents.
"These are copies from the land office. Look at the patterns."
Eliza studied the papers, her anger growing with each revelation.
"He's been doing this for years."
It gets worse. Martha pulled out another document.
"That stagecoach attack, the driver who was killed, his widow, received a payment from Reddick's company.
Compensation for accidental death in company service."
"Accidental?"
Eliza's hands shook.
"Those people were murdered."
"I know. And I think Judge Morrison in Tucson knows too. He's been asking questions, quietly, if you testified, if you could identify the attackers. It would be my word against Reddick's."
"Not just yours."
Martha glanced at Dazin.
"There were Apache warriors who fought the outlaws. If they testified too—"
Dazin's expression was skeptical.
"Apache testimony in white court. They not listen.
Morrison might. He's different.
His own son was killed in an army massacre of peaceful Indians. He seeks justice, not just law."
Eliza felt hope stirring.
"You really think we have a chance?"
"I think you have better chance fighting in court than running forever." Martha reached across to grip her hand. "I'll stand with you. So will others. Reverend Clearwater survived the attack. His testimony would support yours."
"The Reverend's alive."
Relief flooded through Eliza.
"I thought everyone—"
"He was badly hurt, but survived. His wife didn't—" Martha's face was somber.
"But he's willing to speak truth about what happened."
They talked long into the night, planning and debating. Maria and other settlement leaders joined them, asking sharp questions about legal procedures, about guarantees of safety. Finally, as dawn approached, consensus was reached. "We go to Tucson," Maria announced.
"Not just Eliza and Dazin. Many of us. We bring our stories, our proof of Reddick's crimes. Make them see." "It's dangerous,"
Eliza protested.
"I won't have others risk—"
"Risk already here," Maria interrupted. "Better to face with allies than alone." Over the following days, a delegation was assembled. Apache warriors who'd lost family to scalp hunters, Mexican farmers cheated of their land, traders who'd witnessed suspicious activities. Each had a piece of the larger truth. The night before departure, Eliza found herself alone with Dazin beside the settlement's small spring. The water reflected stars like scattered diamonds. "Scared?" he asked.
"Terrified."
She leaned into his warmth. "What if it doesn't work? What if they don't listen? Then we know we tried. Sometimes, trying is its own victory."
"You sound like Maria."
"Maria is wise." He turned her to face him.
"Eliza, before we go, I must say, if something happens—"
"Nothing will happen. Listen." His voice was urgent. "If they separate us, if they try to hold you, promise you'll denounce me. Say I forced you, threatened you, Save yourself." "Never." The word came out fierce. "We stand together or not at all." He kissed her then, desperate and tender at once. Stubborn woman. Stubborn man. They held each other as the stars wheeled overhead. Two souls preparing for a battle that would be fought with words instead of weapons. Tomorrow, they would enter the white man's world and demand justice. Tonight, they had this each other. The desert silence, the promise of dawn. "Whatever happens," Eliza whispered, "I choose you. At every dawn, I choose you." "And I choose you," he replied. "My eagle woman, my heart." As they walked back to the settlement, hand in hand, Eliza felt the weight of what approached, but also the strength of what they'd built, not just love, but community. Not just two people, but two worlds learning to see each other clearly. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but tonight, under the vast desert sky, anything seemed possible. The courthouse in Tucson stood like a monument to order in a lawless land. Its adobe walls baking under the September sun. Eliza adjusted her borrowed dress, a compromise between her desert clothing and town propriety, as their delegation gathered in the dusty square. Dazin stood beside her, wearing his best shirt and leather vest, his face unreadable. "Remember," Martha whispered. "Judge Morrison agreed to see us privately first. We present the evidence. Then he decides whether to convene a formal hearing." Maria Delgado nodded, her gray hair pinned severely back. "We understand, but if he refuses to hear truth, whole town will know why we came." Their group drew stairs as they climbed the courthouse steps, Apache warriors, Mexican farmers, and two white women, one clearly transformed by her time in the desert. Whispers followed their passage. "That's her," someone hissed. "The kidnapped woman." "Don't look kidnapped to me," another replied. Judge William Morrison's chambers were cool and dim after the blazing sun. The judge himself was a thin man in his 60s, with piercing blue eyes that missed nothing. He studied each member of their party before gesturing them to sit. "Miss Hart," he began formally. "The town has been in quite an uproar about your situation, Mr. Reddick has made serious allegations." "All lies," Eliza said firmly. "I was not kidnapped. I fled of my own will after surviving an orchestrated attack." "That's a severe accusation. You have proof." Martha stepped forward, presenting the documents she'd gathered. For the next hour, they laid out the evidence: land transfers, payment records, witness testimonies carefully transcribed. The judge listened without interruption, occasionally making notes. When they finished, he leaned back, fingers steepled. "This is substantial, but circumstantial. What I need is direct testimony linking Reddick to the stagecoach attack." "Then you'll have it," Eliza said. She described the attack in detail, the military spurs, the leader's distinctive drawl. "But there's more. One of the dying men spoke of being hired, mentioned a notebook with details." "A notebook that conveniently vanished. I suppose—" "No." Dazin spoke for the first time, producing a worn leather journal from his pack. "I found this on one of the attackers. Kept it safe." Morrison's eyes sharpened as he examined the journal, reading entries that detailed payments, targets, planned attacks blamed on Apache raids. "This is significant, but it could be challenged as fabrication. Which is why we brought this." Maria gestured to one of the Apache warriors, who stepped forward. "Tell him what you saw." The warrior, Joseph Mungus, spoke in accented but clear English. 3 moons ago, soldiers attack our hunting camp. Say we raided ranch, killed family, but we were 20 miles away, trading at Fort Grant. Have paper from Fort Commander proving this." One by one, others testified. Stories of false accusations, murdered relatives blamed on Apache when evidence pointed elsewhere, land seized after manufactured incidents. The judge's expression grew increasingly grim. "Enough," he finally said. "I'll convene a formal hearing tomorrow, but I warn you Reddick has powerful friends. This will not be easy. As they filed out, a commotion erupted in the square. Thomas Reddick himself stood there with a contingent of hired guns, his face purple with rage.
"There she is,"
he shouted.
"My fiancée, clearly under the influence of her savage captors.
Arrest that Apache immediately." The town sheriff, a man named Daniels, looked uncomfortable. "Now, Mr. Reddick," Judge Morrison said. "I don't care what that Indian-loving fool said." Reddick pushed forward. "Eliza, darling, come here. You're safe now."
"I was never unsafe,"
Eliza replied coldly. "Except when your hired killers attacked our stagecoach." The crowd murmured at this. Reddick's face darkened further. "She's clearly been corrupted, fed lies. Sheriff, do your duty." "The lady seems to be speaking freely," Sheriff Daniels said slowly. "And Judge Morrison has scheduled a hearing. Best let the law take its course." "The law," Reddick laughed bitterly. "When savages can walk our streets, when they can steal our women." "No one stole me," Eliza said loudly, ensuring the growing crowd heard. "I ran from you, Mr. Reddick, from your business arrangement with my father, from a marriage I never consented to."
"Lies."
But Reddick's protest sounded weak. Martha stepped forward. "I have correspondence between you and Reverend Hart discussing terms of purchase, marriage. Quite illuminating reading." The crowd was growing, townspeople drawn by the drama. Eliza recognized several faces from her brief time in Tucson months ago: the banker's wife, the general store owner, women from the church auxiliary.
"Mrs. Patterson," she called to the banker's wife. "You remember when I arrived how eager Mr. Reddick was to claim his property?"
The woman flushed but nodded.
I do remember. It seemed rather commercial."
Because it was. Eliza raised her voice.
"I was sold by my father to clear his debts. When I fled, Mr.
Reddick sent men to retrieve his investment. Those men killed innocent people and blamed Apache raiders." "Slander," Reddick roared. "Sheriff, arrest her." "On what charge?" Judge Morrison's voice cut through the noise. He'd emerged from the courthouse, black robes billowing. "Miss Hart has made serious allegations that deserve investigation, unless you'd prefer to discuss them now, in front of all these witnesses." Reddick's hired gun shifted nervously as Apache warriors moved to flank their party. The tension stretched taut as a bowstring. Then Reverend Clearwater pushed through the crowd, leaning heavily on a cane. His face was scarred from the attack, but his voice rang clear. "It's true, all of it. I was there. I saw the attackers, white men dressed as raiders. I heard them mention Reddick's name before they shot me." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Reddick's face went from purple to white. He's confused. Head injury. Can't trust. I trust my own eyes and ears." Clearwater said firmly. "And my conscience. I've been silent too long, fearing retribution, but seeing this young woman's courage." He looked at Eliza.
"I'll testify, publicly. Let the truth finally be heard."
"This is conspiracy," Reddick sputtered. "You've all been corrupted by these savages." "Careful with your words," Morrison warned. "These savages are witnesses in my court. They'll be treated with respect." "Your court is a mockery." Reddick turned to his men. "We're leaving, but this isn't over." As they pushed through the crowd, one of Reddick's men stumbled against Dazin, quick as lightning. Dazin caught the man's wrist, revealing a knife. "Accident?" Dazin asked mildly. The man jerked free and hurried after his employer. The message was clear: this would not end in the courtroom alone. That night, they made camp outside town, not trusting any hotel to harbor their mixed group safely. Guards were posted, weapons kept close. Eliza found herself pacing, unable to settle.
"You did well today,"
Martha said, joining her by the fire. "Father would be horrified. Of course."
"Father sold me?"
The bitterness still stung. "His horror means nothing to me now." I know. I'm sorry I didn't do more sooner. Eliza softened.
You're doing it now. That matters.
Dasin appeared from the shadows, having walked the perimeter.
All quiet, but tomorrow we finish this,
Eliza said firmly. The hearing convened at dawn. The courtroom packed to capacity. Morrison had called in federal marshals from Fort Lowell, ensuring order. Reddick sat with 3 lawyers, his expression murderous. This hearing will determine whether sufficient evidence exists to charge Mr. Thomas Reddick with conspiracy, murder, and fraud. Morrison announced, "We'll begin with Miss Hart's testimony."
For 2 hours, Eliza spoke. She detailed everything: the arranged marriage, the stagecoach attack, her rescue by Dasin, the evidence they discovered. Reddick's lawyers attempted to interrupt repeatedly, but Morrison shut them down.
"Your client will have opportunity to respond," he said coldly. "Continue, Miss Hart."
When she finished, the other witnesses took their turns. Clearwater's testimony was particularly damning, his ministerial authority carrying weight with the townspeople. The Apache witnesses spoke with quiet dignity about their losses. Maria translated for those who preferred their native language. Then came the physical evidence, the notebook, the land documents, even the shell casings with military markings that Dasin had collected from the attack site.
"Circumstantial," one of Reddick's lawyers protested. "Anyone could have planted these items?" "Perhaps," Morrison agreed. "But taken together, they paint a compelling picture, Mr. Reddick. Would you care to explain these land acquisitions that so conveniently followed Apache raids?" "Business opportunities," Reddick said smoothly. "I can't help if people choose to sell after tragedies." "And the payment to the stagecoach driver's widow? Charity, Christian duty, noted in your company ledger as operational expenses."
Reddick's lawyers whispered furiously with their client. Finally, the lead attorney stood.
"Your Honor, while these accusations are creative, they lack concrete proof linking Mr. Reddick directly to any crimes. We move for dismissal." Morrison was about to respond when the courtroom doors burst open. A dusty rider stumbled in. One of the federal marshals. "Judge," he gasped. "Found something you need to see. That canyon Miss Hart mentioned, we searched it." He produced a cavalry jacket, torn and blood-stained. This was hidden in a cave, along with other military equipment. The name inside, it's Lieutenant James Crawford. Crawford, Morrison's eyes sharpened. He was reported killed in an Apache raid 6 months ago. "Apparently not, sir. We also found this." The marshal held up a leather pouch filled with gold coins and a note. "Payment instructions, signed by T. Reddick." The courtroom exploded in chaos. Reddick lunged to his feet. "Forgeries, lies, this is—" "Sit down, Mr. Reddick." Morrison's voice could have frozen fire. "Marshal, arrest Lieutenant Crawford if he still lives. Mr. Reddick, you are hereby bound over for federal trial on charges of conspiracy, murder, fraud, and inciting racial violence." "You can't do this," Reddick screamed as marshals moved to restrain him. "She's mine. I paid for her. That savage stole what belongs to me."
"I belong to no one but myself," Eliza said clearly. "And I choose my own path."
As Reddick was dragged out, still ranting, Morrison turned to the packed courtroom. "Let this be clear to all: justice is blind to race when truth speaks loudly enough. These witnesses have shown courage in coming forward. Anyone who threatens them will face the full weight of federal law." The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with shock and excitement. Eliza felt her knees go weak with relief. Dasin's hand found hers, steady and warm.
"It's over," she breathed.
"No," Maria corrected, smiling.
"Now it begins real work, building bridges between our peoples, making sure this doesn't happen again."
Morrison approached their group. "Miss Hart, Mr. Dasin, a word." In private, his formal demeanor softened.
"That was brave."
what you did, but Reddick has friends. You might want to consider—" "We're not running," Eliza interrupted. "Not anymore." "I wasn't going to suggest running." Morrison smiled slightly. "I was going to suggest you consider staying. This territory needs people like you, those who see beyond color and custom to justice itself. I could use advisors who understand both worlds." Eliza glanced at Dazin, seeing her own surprise mirrored in his face. "You're offering us work." "I'm offering you a chance to ensure what happened here today becomes common, not exceptional. Think about it." As they emerged into the blazing sun, Eliza felt the world shifting around her. The frightened girl who'd boarded a stagecoach months ago was gone. In her place stood a woman who'd walked through fire and found her strength. "What do you think?" she asked Dazin. "Should we stay?" He studied the town, the mountains beyond, the vast sky above. Here or elsewhere, doesn't matter. Home is where we choose together. "Then let's choose," she said. "At every dawn. Let's choose to build something new." Martha hugged her goodbye, promising to handle their father's inevitable fury. Maria and the others prepared for their journey home, but several young people asked to stay, to learn, to be part of whatever came next. As the sun set over Tucson, painting the desert in shades of gold and crimson, Eliza and Dazin stood together on the courthouse steps. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new battles for justice and understanding. But tonight, they had won. Not just a legal victory, but something deeper, the right to choose their own path, to love without permission, to build a future from the ashes of prejudice. "Now we are free," Dazin said softly, echoing his words from that first dawn. "Now we begin," Eliza corrected, and kissed him there on the courthouse steps, in full view of anyone who cared to look. "Let them see," she thought. "Let them see that love is stronger than hate, that truth can defeat lies, that two people from different worlds can choose to create a new one together." The desert wind carried their whispered promises into the vast Arizona night, where stars bore witness to the birth of something unprecedented, a love that would not be denied, a justice that would not be silenced, a future written not in the rigid lines of law, but in the fluid script of human courage. The news of Reddick's conviction rippled through the territory like a stone thrown into still water. His sentence, 20 years for conspiracy and incitement to murder, sent shockwaves through the railroad interests and land speculators who had operated with similar impunity. But justice, Eliza learned, was only the beginning of change. 2 months after the trial, she and Dazin stood before Judge Morrison in his chambers, Martha and Maria Delgado serving as witnesses. The ceremony was simple, the words binding them in law as they had already been bound in heart. "By the authority vested in me," Morrison concluded, a slight smile playing at his lips. "I pronounce you husband and wife." Dazin took her hands, his dark eyes holding promises too deep for words. "Now we are one at each dawn," he said softly, adapting their private vow for this public moment. Outside the courthouse, a small crowd had gathered, some supportive, others merely curious. Anna from the mountain settlement pressed forward with a wedding gift, a beautifully woven blanket featuring the sunrise pattern from the ancient petroglyphs. "For your new home," she said, embracing Eliza. "May each dawn bring joy." Their new home was a small adobe house on the edge of town, purchased with funds from Eliza's work as translator and medical assistant to Dr. Samuel Hartwell, one of the few physicians who treated Apache and Mexican patients alongside whites. Dazin had found employment breaking horses and serving as a scout for the freight companies, his knowledge of the desert invaluable for safe passage. But their true work happened in the evenings and weekends, as their home became an unofficial meeting place for what Martha had dubbed the bridge builders, those from all communities who believed in Morrison's vision of justice. "We need a school," declared Rosa Medina, the Mexican blacksmith's wife, during one such gathering. "Our children learn separately, grow up fearing each other. How can they build a better world?" "The town council will never approve it," warned Marcus Chen. a Chinese merchant who had faced his own battles for acceptance. They barely tolerate mixed marriages, let alone mixed education. Then we start small, Eliza suggested. Private lessons, reading, writing, arithmetic, all children welcome. Where? Asked Joseph Mangus, who had stayed in Tucson after the trial. Your house is too small. The old mission, Dawson said quietly. San Augustine, abandoned but still solid. Needs repair, but it's perfect, Eliza finished. Excitement building, neutral ground, sacred to all. The project took months. Dawson organized work crews from all communities, teaching young men to work together as they repaired adobe walls and patched the roof. Eliza coordinated with sympathetic townswomen to gather supplies, books, slates, benches, doctor. Hartwell donated medical supplies for a small clinic attached to the school. Not everyone approved. 3 weeks before the planned opening, Eliza woke to find their front door marked with red paint, Indian Lover scrawled in ugly letters. Dawson's jaw tightened when he saw it. But he said nothing, simply fetched water and scrubbed it away. Maybe we're pushing too fast, Eliza said, watching him work. No. He turned to face her. Fear makes them cruel, but children who learn together won't fear each other. This is worth fighting for. The next night brought worse a rock through their window with a note, leave or burn. Sheriff Daniels, who had grown more sympathetic since Reddick's trial, increased patrols near their house. I can't change hearts, he admitted, but I can enforce law. Anyone tries violence, they'll answer to me. Support came from unexpected quarters. Reverend Clearwater, still bearing scars from the stagecoach attack, preached a sermon on brotherhood that split his congregation but brought new allies. The banker's wife, Mrs. Patterson, quietly donated funds. Even some of the fort soldiers, tired of fighting enemies created by greed, offered protection. The night before the school opening, Eliza couldn't sleep. She found Dawson on their small porch, watching the stars. Nervous? He asked, pulling her close. Terrified. What if no one comes? What if only our friends? Then we teach our friends' children, and they teach others. Change is slow, like water wearing down stone. She leaned into his warmth. When did you become so wise? When I met a woman brave enough to walk into the desert rather than live a lie. A coyote called in the distance, answered by another. The sound no longer frightened her, it was simply part of the night's music, like Dawson's steady breathing, like her own heartbeat. Morning brought surprises. First to arrive was Timothy O'Brien, the Irish teamster, with his 3 red-haired children. My Mary couldn't read, he said gruffly. Died not knowing her letters. Won't happen to mine. Then came the Medina children, the Chen twins, 2 Apache boys from the reservation who had walked 10 miles. By noon, they had 18 students aged 5 to 15, speaking 4 languages between them. Eliza stood before them, her throat tight with emotion. Welcome, she said in English, then Spanish, then the Apache words Dawson had taught her. Here, we learn together. The first weeks were chaotic. Fights broke out over nothing, a borrowed pencil, a perceived slight. Parents complained about their children learning alongside others. Twice windows were broken in the night. But slowly, painfully, progress emerged. Maria Medina's daughter helped an Apache boy with his letters. The Chen twins taught everyone to count on an abacus. Timothy's eldest, Catherine, emerged as a natural leader, keeping peace with a firm hand and Irish humor. Look, Dawson said one afternoon, pointing to the courtyard where children played together, their laughter mixing languages into a new kind of music. The future. But the past wasn't finished with them. Word came on a dusty afternoon Thomas Reddick had escaped during a prison transfer, killed 2 guards, disappeared into Mexico. The federal marshal who brought the news looked grim. He'll likely stay south, the marshal said, but thought you should know. Man like that holds grudges. That night, Eliza felt the old fear returning. We were foolish to think it was over.
Not foolish, Dawson corrected. Hopeful, different thing. They increased security at the school, stationed guards at night. Life continued, but with a shadow at its edges. Then Martha arrived with unexpected news. "Father's dead," she said simply, sitting in their kitchen. Heart gave out during a sermon on the wages of sin. Rather fitting, really. Eliza felt nothing. The man who had sold her was gone, and she found no grief in her heart. Did he ever acknowledge what he did? Never. Went to his grave believing he'd saved you from spinsterhood, Martha sighed. But there's more. He left everything to the church, except... She produced a document. Mother's jewelry, hidden away all these years. He left it to you with a note. Eliza read her father's cramped handwriting. For my daughter Eliza, may she find forgiveness in her heart for a father who loved poorly, but loved nonetheless. Too little, too late, she said, but she took the jewelry box. Inside lay her mother's wedding ring, a string of pearls, and a silver locket she remembered from childhood. There's something else, Martha said. I'm staying in Tucson. The school needs teachers, and I need purpose beyond organizing church socials. Eliza embraced her cousin. You're welcome here, always. The school grew. They added evening classes for adults, teaching English to Mexican and Chinese workers, Spanish to Anglo settlers, basic medicine to anyone who wanted to learn. Dr. Hartwell held a clinic twice weekly. Judge Morrison taught basic law, ensuring all communities understood their rights. One evening, as Eliza prepared medicines in the clinic, she felt a familiar dizziness. Her monthly courses had been late, her appetite strange. When she mentioned it to Anna, the woman's face lit up. The charm worked, you carry new life. Eliza's hand went to her still flat belly, wonder and fear mingling. A child, in this world of progress and prejudice, hope and hatred. That night, she told Dawson as they lay together, his hand covering hers over the promise of new life. Are you happy? She asked. His answer was a kiss that spoke volumes, then words whispered against her skin. Happy, proud, little bit scared. Only a little. Our child will be strong. Has to be, with you for mother. As her pregnancy progressed, the reactions were mixed. Some saw it as further evidence of societal decay. Others, particularly the mixed families already navigating such waters, offered support and advice. Dr. Hartwell monitored her carefully, fascinated by her knowledge of Apache remedies for morning sickness. The school faced its own trials. The territorial government, pressured by conservative elements, threatened to withdraw recognition of any educational certificates issued. Morrison fought back with legal challenges, but the battle was draining. Then came the night that changed everything. Eliza was teaching a late literacy class when armed riders surrounded the mission. Not random thugs, but organized men with purpose. Their leader pushed through the door, and Eliza's blood froze. Thomas Reddick stood there, gaunt from his time as a fugitive, but eyes burning with the same malevolent fire. Hello, my dear. I've come to collect what's mine. I was never yours, she said, instinctively moving to protect her students. No, I paid good money for you. Your father's debts cleared, and you ran off with this savage. He spat the last word. But I'm generous. Come with me now, and I'll spare the school. Refuse. He didn't need to finish. His men held torches, the threat clear. Let the children go first, Eliza said. They're not part of this. Touching, yes, let them run home. Tell everyone what happens to those who defy natural order. As the students fled, Eliza caught young Catherine O'Brien's eye, mouthing one word, sheriff. The girl nodded and ran. Now then, Reddick advanced. You're coming with me. That half-breed abomination you carry will be dealt with, and you'll remember your place. Over my dead body. Dawson's voice came from the doorway. He stood there with Joseph Mangus and 3 other Apache men, all armed. Ah, the savage himself.
Reddick smiled coldly. Kill him? The mission erupted in gunfire. Eliza dropped behind an overturned bench, her hands protectively over her belly. She heard Dazin's war cry, the crash of bodies, the sharp crack of rifles. Smoke filled the air, choking and blinding. Then, as suddenly as it began, silence fell. Eliza raised her head to see Dazin standing over Reddick's prone form, blood spreading beneath the railroad man's body. Half of Reddick's men were down. The others fled or surrendering as Sheriff Daniels and a posse burst through the doors. Eliza Dazin was beside her in an instant, hands checking for injury. I'm fine. We're fine. She gripped his arms, feeling him solid and alive. Reddick coughed, blood on his lips. Should have stayed where you belonged. I am exactly where I belong, Eliza told him. Where I chose to be. He died with hatred in his eyes, taking his poisoned worldview with him. The aftermath was swift. The surviving attackers were arrested, trials scheduled. The attack on the school had crossed a line even for those uncomfortable with integration. Threatening children was universally condemned. Support poured in from unexpected sources. Seems folks needed to see what opposing progress really looks like, Morrison observed. Nothing like violent thugs to clarify moral positions. The school reopened within a week, with more students than ever. The territorial government quietly dropped its threats, and on a crisp October morning, Eliza gave birth to a daughter with her father's dark eyes and her mother's determined chin. What shall we name her? Dawson asked, cradling the infant with infinite tenderness. Eliza thought of all they'd survived, all they'd built, all that lay ahead. Dawn, she said. Morning star in your language. Dawn for new beginnings. As she nursed their daughter, Eliza looked out the window at the mission school where children of all colors learned side by side. Not perfect, not without problems, but real, lasting, growing. You did it, Martha said, visiting with a basket of food. You actually changed things. We did it, Eliza corrected. All of us, and we're not done. She was right. The years ahead would bring new challenges, drought, economic hardship, political backlash, but they would also bring growth, gradual acceptance, and children who grew up seeing difference as interesting rather than threatening. And through it all, Eliza and Dazin would continue choosing each other at every dawn, building a life that proved love could bridge any divide, that courage could overcome any prejudice, that two people from different worlds could create something entirely new and beautiful together. The desert had taught her its greatest lesson, that life could bloom in the harshest conditions, if the roots were strong enough and the will to grow unstoppable. And as she held her daughter, symbol of hope. Proof of possibility, Eliza knew their roots ran deep indeed. 5 years had passed since that violent night at the mission school. Dawn or morning star, as the Apache community called her, ran through the courtyard where her parents had once feared for their future. Her laughter mixing English and Apache words in the way children do when languages are simply tools for joy. Eliza watched from the doorway of the expanded clinic. Her second child, a son they'd named Samuel after Dr. Hartwell, balanced on her hip. The old doctor had passed the previous winter, leaving his practice to her with the blessing of the Territorial Medical Board. A victory hard won through years of proving herself. Mama, look, Dawn called, holding up a paper covered in carefully drawn letters. I wrote my name in 3 languages. Wonderful, little one, Eliza replied, shifting Samuel as he reached for her medical bag. At nearly 30, she bore the marks of desert life sun lines around her eyes, hands roughened by work, a confidence that came from facing down death and prejudice alike. Dazin emerged from the stable they'd added to the mission complex, where he taught young men Apache, Mexican, and Anglo alike the art of horse training. His hair showed threads of silver now, the scar on his shoulder more pronounced, but his movements remained fluid as water. The Stevenson boy has real talent, he told Eliza. Reminds me of myself at that age, angry at the world but gentle with horses. His father still opposes him coming here, Eliza noted. His father will learn. They always do, when they see their children thriving. It was true. The school that had begun with 18 students now served over 100, with Martha and 2 other teachers managing classes that ranged from basic literacy to advanced mathematics. The territorial government had not only recognized their certificates, but had begun sending officials to study their methods. And Mrs. Hart. A young woman hurried across the courtyard. Rebecca Chen, one of their first students, now training as a nurse. Emergency at the Rodriguez farm, their youngest snakebite. Eliza passed Samuel to Dazin and grabbed her medical bag. "Saddle Sage for me," she told him, referring to the steady mare that had carried her on countless medical calls. "Rebecca, gather the antivenom kit." As they rode out, Eliza reflected on how natural this life felt now. The woman who had once worn corsets and worried about propriety now rode astride in practical leather skirts, carrying Apache remedies alongside modern medicines, treating patients who would have once seemed foreign but were now simply neighbors. The Rodriguez boy survived, thanks to quick treatment and the anti-venom technique Joseph Mangas had taught her. As payment, Senor Rodriguez promised 2 goats for the school. Payment in kind was common and welcomed. Feeding the lunch program Martha had instituted. Returning at sunset, Eliza found an unexpected gathering at their home. Judge Morrison, now Territorial Supreme Court Justice, sat on their porch with several other officials, including a man she didn't recognize, well-dressed, with the bearing of Eastern authority. "Ah, Dr. Hart," Morrison stood. "May I present Mr. Theodore Whitman from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. He's come to see your work." Eliza's defenses rose immediately. The Bureau was known for its civilizing missions, for taking children from their families. "Mr. Whitman," she said coolly. Dr. Hart." The man studied her with intelligent eyes. "I've heard remarkable things about your integrated school. The commissioner sent me to investigate whether your model might be expanded." "Expanded?" Dawson's voice held the same wariness. "Replicated, rather, in other territories. The current reservation school system is—" Whitman paused, choosing words carefully. "Failing. Children taken from families, forbidden their languages, punished for their cultures. The results are tragic." "And you want to change this?" Eliza couldn't hide her skepticism. "I want to try. I've read your reports to Judge Morrison. Children learning multiple languages, not forced to abandon their own. Families involved, not separated. Academic success across all groups." He leaned forward. "I need to see if it's real." Over the following days, Whitman observed classes, interviewed parents, reviewed records. He watched Apache children teach traditional stories alongside Shakespeare, saw Mexican daughters excel at mathematics, witnessed Anglo sons learning desert survival skills with enthusiasm. "This shouldn't work," he said one evening, dining with Eliza and Dawson's family. "Everything I was taught says integration leads to conflict." "Integration without respect leads to conflict," Dawson corrected. "We teach respect first, rest follows." Dawn, eating with the serious concentration of a 5-year-old, looked up. "Mr. Whitman doesn't speak Apache. Should I teach him?" "That's kind of you to offer," Whitman said, charmed. "Kindness is easy," Dawn replied, parroting something she'd clearly heard often. "Fear is hard. We choose easy." Whitman left convinced, promising to advocate for community-based schools that honored rather than erased cultural identities. It was a small victory in a long war, but it mattered. Not all battles were won. The summer brought severe drought, wells running dry. The Apache community's traditional water sources became precious beyond measure, creating new tensions as desperate ranchers eyed the flowing springs. "They're saying we're hoarding water," Joseph reported during a council meeting, "that Indians shouldn't control such resources." "Let me guess," Martha said dryly. "They'd prefer the railroad company controlled it." "The railroad company that poisons half the wells it touches," Rosa Medina spat. Never. Eliza proposed a solution that seemed radical water-sharing agreements based on traditional Apache management practices, with each community contributing labor to maintain and expand the irrigation systems. The negotiations were tense, requiring all of Morrison's legal skills and Dawson's diplomacy. "You're asking us to trust them," demanded Carl Brennan, whose ranch bordered the Apache water sources. "I'm asking you to trust us." Dawson replied, "We who have kept these springs flowing for generations, we who have shared with you already, asking nothing. Until now. Now we ask for partnership. Your strength, our knowledge, all survive or none do." It took the wells on 3 Anglo ranches running completely dry before pride gave way to pragmatism. The water-sharing compact became a model, copied across the territory as drought deepened. Working together on irrigation projects broke down barriers faster than any school lesson. But progress never came without cost. A fever swept through the settlement that autumn, hitting the children hardest. Eliza worked tirelessly, teaching others to recognize symptoms, prepare medicines, maintain quarantines. Still, they lost 7 children, each death a dagger to the heart. "Maybe the traditionalists are right," Anna whispered, cradling her feverish grandson. "Maybe mixing our peoples brings only sorrow." "Disease doesn't care about race," Eliza said gently, administering willow bark tea. "But healing does. Your remedies, my training, doctor, Hartwell's teachings together, we save more than we lose." The boy survived, as did most others. But the grief lingered, binding the community in shared loss as much as shared hope. Winter brought unexpected joy. Martha, at 35 and considered a permanent spinster, shocked everyone by marrying Samuel Clearwater, the Reverend's nephew who'd come to help with the mission. Their wedding in the restored chapel drew attendees from every community, a celebration that would have been unthinkable 5 years earlier. "Who would have thought," Martha laughed at the reception, "that I'd find love in the desert?" "Desert teaches truth," Maria Delgado said, aged now but still sharp. "In truth, love grows strong." As 1884 dawned, Eliza stood in the pre-dawn darkness, a ritual she'd maintained since that first morning with Dawson. She heard his footsteps behind her, felt his arms encircle her waist. "Regrets?" he asked, as he did each anniversary of their meeting. "Never," she replied, as she always did. "You? Only that I didn't find you sooner." Dawn, the child, not the time padded out to join them. Samuel toddling behind. They stood together, watching the sun rise over the mountains, painting the desert in shades of gold and rose. "Tell the story," Dawn demanded. "About when you were mine at dawn." Eliza smiled, pulling her daughter close. "It means choosing each other when the world is new. It means every day is a beginning if you're brave enough to see it." "Like our school," Dawn said confidently. "Every day, new things to learn." "Exactly like that." The light grew stronger, illuminating the mission complex that had become the heart of an unlikely community. Already, smoke rose from breakfast fires as families prepared for another day of small miracles, children learning together, parents working together, futures being written together. "Look!" Dawson pointed to where a golden eagle circled high above. "Good omen." "Or just a bird looking for breakfast," Eliza teased. "Both can be true," Samuel piped up, his first complete sentence surprising them all. They laughed, the sound carrying across the desert like a promise. Here, in this harsh land that demanded truth and courage, they had built something unprecedented. Not perfect perfection was for dreams, but real, rooted, growing stronger with each passing season. Eliza thought of the frightened girl she'd been, accepting a life of quiet desperation as her fate. That girl could never have imagined this, standing in the desert dawn with children who embodied hope, beside a man who'd taught her that love was not possession but daily choice, surrounded by a community that proved different peoples could build something beautiful together. "Mama," Dawn tugged at her skirt, "when I grow up, I want to be a teacher doctor writer like you.
Why not? Eliza smoothed her daughter's dark hair. In this place, you can be anything you're brave enough to become. As the sun climbed higher, the settlement stirred to life. Children ran to school, their laughter a universal language. Parents headed to fields and workshops, united by shared purpose. The mission bell rang, calling not to worship but to possibility. Time to go, Dazin said, but he held his family close for one more moment. Time to begin, Eliza corrected, echoing words spoken long ago. They walked back to their adobe home, children chattering about the day's plans. Behind them, the desert stretched endless and unforgiving. Before them, the community they'd helped build bustled with purposeful life. At the threshold, Eliza turned for one last look at the sunrise. In its light, she saw not just beauty, but the promise that every dawn brought new chances to choose love over fear, bridge building over wall raising, courage over comfort. Now we belong to what we chose at dawn, she murmured, adapting their private vow one more time. And they did, all of them Apache and Anglo, Mexican and Chinese, all who had chosen to see past difference to shared humanity. In a world still struggling with old hatreds, they had carved out a small space where the future could take root. It was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Thank you so much for listening to this story of love, courage, and bridging divides in the American frontier. I'd love to hear where you're listening from. Please share your thoughts and let me know what touched your heart in this tale of Eliza and Dazin. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Tales, give this video a like, and hit the hype button to help more people discover these tales of the Old West. Your support helps bring these stories to life. Until next time, may you find your own dawn and the courage to choose love over fear.